Hi, Professor Adil. Welcome to another CERP podcast. What are some of the lessons that environmental regulators can learn from the temporary improvement in average air quality as a result of the recent lockdowns? Is this strong enough evidence for better environmental regulations going forward?
I think that's what we all hope. There are clearly lots of lessons, and there is already the beginning of a narrative of what the lessons are. My worry is that some of the things that are positive lessons can very quickly become negative trends depending on how the narrative develops. So I think there are three big things that people have already begun talking about, whether experts or policymakers, in terms of the lessons that environmentalists, climate change in particular, want to take out of it. But how society takes it will be different. So the three big ones is, one is this: suddenly all the things we thought are impossible or difficult happened, right? People stopped driving to work. Industries slowed down or stopped. Emissions reduced, depending on who you ask, anywhere from 8% to 12% globally. CO2 might have gone down. So
Right.
suddenly all these things that we thought are good, but everyone said, these are very difficult, these will never happen. Suddenly they happened. And so the lesson we want to take is that what seems impossible isn't really impossible and can be done. That's the positive message. The negative message is that people will remember that it took a pandemic, and they might actually have pent up demand and desire to go out and drive long distances and fly long places because they're feeling kind of, um, um, you know, hope to sort of roped in. Now, how that develops and whether the message becomes it is not as difficult to do as we thought, rather than the message that it takes a catastrophe and the cost of doing anything positive will be that high. So that's the challenge. The second big message is that is being taken is, which I think is a very good message. Bill McKibben has, for example, highlighted this, is that science matters. So a lot of environment folks, climate folks have been saying that, look here, you cannot negotiate with science. Chemistry works the way chemistry works. Physics works the way physics works. And in comes this coronavirus and reminds us that biology works the way it works. Once the pathogen is there, the pathogen has rules of its own. If the pathogen says stand 6 feet apart, then you should really stand 6 feet apart. And so the primacy of expert knowledge of science has become really important. So that's the message that climate, for example, has been saying and has been highlighted by the pathogen, that once it takes over, once you cross the threshold, your room for other decision becomes very limited because of that. However, the negative side of this is you could come out of this saying, okay, then the only problem is solving carbon. And I can manage carbon in many ways that may not be socially good. So I'm going to keep economics aside and sociology aside and anthropology aside and human rights aside and politics aside, and I'm just going to find whatever way I can manage the carbon molecule by it. That could be nuclear, that could be geoengineering. There are a number of things that are not actually very societally beneficial. And that message, if that negative one sets in, then the danger is that we will assume as if we can ignore anthropology and sociology and justice and economics and equity. And what the message should be is that the pathogen is also making us realize that you can't ignore them, that the science works, but it works in the context of those things. The virus will hit the poor and the rich, the tall and the short, the man and the woman the same, but the impacts will not be the same because the
Right.
conditions aren't, right? And the third big lesson, if I can end with, is this lesson that we environmentalists would like to take from this, which is that nature matters, that ecosystem health is human health. And getting healthy ecosystems is what will lead to good human health. That's a very powerful message if it sets in. But the flip side of that message is, if we start seeing the bat as the enemy, right? This came out of wet markets, and this came out of sort of things where humans and nature interacted, and therefore we must go and just stop them and halt them and close them.
Right.
Then it can become an anti-nature message. So what I'm saying is there are positive messages that I hope will come, but it is not written in stone that that is what will happen.